Kaiwa practice last time, right? So let's see. My bookmark says that we're up to part C, Tawaho Su. So asking for permission and giving permission. Is that what had we finished that one or started that one or not started it yet?
We didn't start it.
Haven't started.
Okay, so yeah, that's, my bookmarks are imprecise. It's hard to tell sometimes. Okay, so let's start with that one. So I'm going to let Corey and Sierra read the example for us to start us off, and then we'll move on from there.
タバコを吸ってもういいですか?
Read those?
Yeah.
いいですよ。どうぞ。すみません。
ちょっと. Okay, so if you're saying sure, no problem, hey, いいですよ, どうぞ, sure, go ahead, no problem, right? Or すみません, ちょっと, it's like, I'm sorry, but, you know, and the ... is because in Japanese you don't necessarily explicitly state the negative, right? We've talked about that before, I think. So, Sierra-san, 1番, see if you can convert that one into the asking for permission.
電話をかけてもいいですか?
There you go. もういいですか? It's asking, may I, is it okay if I, what's, 電話をかける. 電話をかけてもいいですか? What's it asking?
Something about a phone.
Yeah.
It's probably call.
Yeah, is it okay if I call on the phone or make a phone call? When?
At night.
夜 at night, okay? 夜電話をかけてもいいですか? So like maybe you're trying to figure out the best time to call this person. So you're asking, is it okay if I call you at night? Maybe, you know. Maybe they've got little kids who go to bed early and they don't want the phone ringing at night. You know, or maybe they go to bed super early. Okay. So Tatiana-san gets to choose if she wants to answer with a positive or a negative.
いいですよ.
Okay. Finish with the どうぞ.
Oh, yeah, that's like, it's like looks disconnected.
Yeah, it's two sentences, but it's kind of all one answer. The slash is the dividing line. Okay, じゃあ2番どうぞ.
Oh, no, pen.
Yeah.
Oh.
はい、借りて。
Okay.
借りる、借ります、借りて。
を借りていいですか?
借りても。
もういいですか?
Yeah, gotta get that も in there. That's part of the structure.
いいですよ、どうぞ.
はい。いいですね. And by the way, the どうぞ, in the case of something like the pen, would often be accompanied by the actual action of passing her a pen. Okay, so the どうぞ in something like 夜電話をかけてもいいですか? はい、いいですよ、どうぞ. There's nothing to hand over, right? But in the case of something like ペンを借りてもいいですか? She probably means right now. Like you're about to start taking a test and she doesn't have a pen that works. So you would probably give her one right then and there, if that's the case.
We should probably do charades for
Yeah.
review later.
Yeah. So, ペンを借りてもいいですか? はい、いいですよ、どうぞ. じゃあ3番どうぞ.
窓を開けてもいいですか?
いいですよ。
どうぞ.
どうぞ。
はい。じゃあ4番.
カロリーをつけてもいいですか?
はい、いいですよ、どうぞ。
はい。
歩 ってもいいですか？
いいですよ。どうぞ。
はい。じゃあ6番どうぞ。これ。
No.
Just
like
no,
no,
they-
sorry.
これでこれさんの部屋に行ってもいいですか？
はい。コーリさんの部屋に行ってもいいですか？
いいですよ。どうぞ。
はい。いいですね。So that could be, for example, you're visiting his house and you're not sure if it's okay to go to his room, or you're suggesting getting together to study, and maybe you guys live in dorm rooms and you're asking if it's okay to go to his place to study. You know, it could be lots of different circumstances, right? And sometimes if you're visiting somebody's house, but you want to have some privacy to hang out together, you might want to go in the bedroom because his 7-person family is all hanging out in the living room together, and you're never going to be able to study out there, you know. You know. So, you know, in Japanese homes, a lot of times the bedrooms are teeny tiny and or multi-purpose. Sometimes there isn't a private space because if it's in a traditional Japanese home, they might have a tatami mat room that is the shared family bedroom at night and the shared family living room during the daytime. You know, depending on how big the family is, how small the house is. You know, I had friends who, when they were newlyweds, they had an apartment that would fit inside this classroom with room to spare. And it was literally, you know, teeny tiny little entranceway, teeny tiny little hallway, teeniest bathroom you've ever seen, a small kitchen, and a small multi-purpose room that was living room during the day and bedroom at night. It was literally like the little table was on stubby legs like this, and you sat on cushions on the floor and sat around that table to eat or to watch TV or whatever. And then at night they would just lift the table, lean it against the wall with its stubby little legs, and get the bedding out of the closet and lay it in the same place where the table had been. And, you know, just push the cushions out of the way, push the table out of the way, put the bedding on the floor, and the two of them slept in there. And they had there was like probably an inch on either side of the bedding, between the bedding and the wall. You know, and there was no space for them to like have a guest or a pet or a child, you know, forget it. They had to get a bigger space when they got kids, so.
I was like, have a small like bird's cage set.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, well, she did have a turtle in a small aquarium, or terrarium, I guess you'd call it, on the kitchen table. So they had like a work table in the kitchen, and the turtle's thing took up most of that kitchen counter space. There was almost no counter space in the kitchen. That's how tiny this place was. Anyway, but that's a fairly typical like city apartment for young people to have. You know, they were way downtown, so, you know, if you want to be that close to where you work, that's the kind of space you can afford. If you want to have a bigger house than that, you're going to have a 2 or 3 hour commute. Okay. じゃあ3番. So the temo ii desu ka, is everybody okay with that? So that the basic structure there is, you know, your te form, your mo ii desu ka, right? So this verb, is it okay if I do it? Basically, that's what it's, is it okay if I do this verb? That's what this structure is doing. Hi.
Mentioned in a footnote that in casual form the mo drops out.
Yeah, well, and Jessica does too. Yeah, so if you're really being casual, all of that. 食べていい?
It's all in your inflection.
Yeah, it's all in your inflection. And then the answer might be いいよ. You know, and if the answer is no, it might be ダメ. Just that, you know. So yeah, casual speech drops lots of stuff. And one of the reasons to learn the more formal stuff first is so that you've got it ingrained, so that when you need it, you know it, because you don't want to accidentally use casual in a place where that's inappropriate and rude. Another reason is because if you don't learn the particle placements that belong there initially, it's hard to insert them later, right? If you learn them and you know what belongs there, it's not that hard to learn, oh yeah, I can drop it now, but I know what belongs there in case I want to put it back in to be more formal, right? But if you never learned it in the first place, then all you're ever going to know is casual. So that's part of the reasoning behind teaching the casual speech later. Let's learn formal first so that everybody knows how to do it properly. And the slang will be easy to pick up once you're more conversant with the formal stuff. Okay, so moving on to this new structure. Same te form, right? So I like to use taberu as an example just because it's an easy one and it's one that it's easy to come up with examples for, right? So tabete mo ii desu ka? You ask somebody, is it okay for me to eat that? Tabete wa, particle wa, ikemasen. Okay? To eat that is not allowed. Okay, that's what this structure is doing. So notice they don't put the word breaks, so it's harder to identify it. And over the years I've learned to put the word breaks in and to make very explicitly clear that this is the particle wa, because otherwise I get people pronouncing it haikimasen. What? It's wa ikemasen.
I get confused when I see a ha.
Yeah.
They want to say wa.
Yeah, so it's tabete wa ikemasen. If you break it apart a little further and think about this as being a conjugation of iku. Everybody remembers iku, right? Ikimasu, to go. Ikemas is to be able to go. Okay? So ikemasen would be unable to go, not able to go, right? So if you think about that as an idiom, think about it in English. You know, we have expressions like, oh yeah, that won't fly. That's not going to work, right? We don't literally mean that, like, the car isn't going to function when you tell it to drive. It means, like, you know, you can't go that way. You can't do it that way. You can't do that, right? So, you know, if you're proposing an idea to your friend and your friend says, nah, that's not going to fly, it doesn't mean it literally, right? We're not talking about aircraft necessarily, right? So it's the same kind of thing. It can't go is an idiom, in this case for something not being allowed. Okay? Does that make sense? But it helps to know that that's where it came from. Just because then you have a concept for, okay, this is an idiom that works off of a verb I already know. Right? And it also helps you separate it out from that particle wa. Because then you get the concept that this is basically the subject. The action of doing this verb is what won't work.
I've been saying
Okay.
haikimasen the whole time.
Yeah.
It just doesn't sound right.
Yeah. Yeah. So for example, let's say there's a gorgeous birthday cake sitting on the kitchen counter. 食べてもいいですか? Can I eat some of that? いえ、食べてはいけませんよ. No, you can't. It's for the birthday party tomorrow. You can't have it now. No fingers in the icing. Right?
And then you have the 4-year-old kid who just really wants cake.
Yeah.
My brother once pulled the cake off of the counter because it had Pokemon toys on it and he wanted them. So it fell on its side and we had to cut the side off, but it was okay. We still had it.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure every one of us could come up with cake stories for kids, but but you get the idea, right? So whatever the verb is, 手はいけません is saying that that action is not allowed. Okay, so タバコを吸ってはいけません. You're not allowed to smoke tobacco in whatever venue you're talking about, right? その教室でタバコを吸ってはいけません. You're not allowed to smoke in this classroom, right? Or whatever other verb you can think of. パーティーに友達を連れて行ってはいけません. You're not allowed to bring a friend to that party. It's invitation only. It could be anything, right? テレビを見てはいけません. You're not allowed to watch TV right now, right? テストの時、教科書を見てはいけません. Right? During a test, you're not allowed to look at the book. Right? Those are all different examples of where that can be used. Does that make sense?
That's good.
Okay. So does that help knowing this division?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, okay. So 手はいけません. Okay. So now we're gonna do section A. So Roman numeral 2A, we've got that whole list that, remember we were practicing 手もいいですか? And we were just answering with はい、いいですよ、どうぞ for all of them, right? Now we're going to do the reverse. Now we're going to turn it around and say you're not allowed to do 1, you're not allowed to do 2, and so on and so forth. Okay, so Kori-san, you get to do the example.
テレビを見てはいけません.
はい、テレビを見てはいけません. If it helps, you can put a little pause in your sentence after the wa. Like if you're looking for where can you take a breath in there, right after the wa is a good spot to put your breath. And that way it gives you the natural break to make the grammar structure sound more sensible, right? テレビを見てはいけません.
Okay.
じゃあ1番.
Tobacco を吸って
はい
はいけません。
はい、タバコを吸ってはいけません. Good. じゃあ、立山さん、2番. Okay, on Roman numeral 2A, the previous page, there's a whole list of things, and
Just
they want
change
to
those into the.
just change it to the negative.
Yeah, I was confused
Yeah,
when I
I was
looked
like,
at
what
that.
was he? I was okay.
Yeah,
So I'm doing number 3.
2番.
Two, sorry. 窓を閉めてはいけません。
はい。どうぞ。
朝シャワーを浴びてはいけません。
はい、いけません. Make sure you're pronouncing it with the ke, not ki, because it does sound weird if you change it to ikimasen instead of ikemasen. はい。じゃあどうぞ。
どうぞ
はい。
帰って
はい。
はいけません.
はい。遅く帰ってはいけません. はい。じ じゃあ、ジョヤさん5番。
友達を連れてくってはいけません。
連れてきて、
聞いてはいけません。
はい。
音楽を、聞いてはいけません。
はい、いいですね。
夜出かけてはいけません。
はい。夜出かけてはいけません。はい、じゃあ8番。パ。
パソコン
はい。
パソコンをつけて
使って、
使ってはいけません。
はい。つけて would be turn on. 使って is use.
はい
はい。
自転車を借りてはいけません。
はい、いいですね。So does everybody get the concept? Okay, so obviously it takes practice, so let's do some more. Okay, じゃあ so I'm going to let Dylan-san read the example, and then we're going to come up with a few more.
学校でタバコを吸ってはいけません。And then, ホストファミリーのうちで朝シャワーを浴びてもいいです。
Right. Okay. So try to come up with one negative and one positive of things that are and are not allowed. Could be your house, your workplace, this school, your imagination, whatever. So, Avery-san, what can you come up with?
After that, jag duger för det. Nettoa.
Okay. 寝て
いけま
は
せん。
いけません。Okay. 学校で寝てはいけません。
Yeah.
Okay. That works.
Men, which day? Uchi sakana or tabete. How do you positive again?
食べてもいいです。
More desu.
はい。Here's the
Okay.
positive one, just minus the ka. はい。
学校で電話にかけてはいけません。
いけません。Okay. はい。
うちで電話を使ってはいけ
はい、そうですね。はい。
学校でお酒を飲んで、
Yeah.
飲んではいけません。
はい。 or tsukete? Which one?
使って
はい。
もういいですかもういいです。And
はい
then, 黒板
Can I help?
I'm looking for a race.
Kesu.
What is it?
Kesu.
Kesu. Kokuban kes
黒板
を消して
消して。
消してはいけません。
はい。黒板を消してはいけません。That works. Right.
学校で電話をかけはいけません。
かけてはいけ
かけて
ません。はい。
No, I don't know what to say.
One thing you're allowed to do wherever. Could be where you are allowed to make phone calls. Maybe you're not allowed to make phone calls at school, but you can at home, something like that.
Is casa home? I forgot the word for home.
Uchi de. Uchi.
Uchi.
Yeah, casa is umbrella.
Um,
Getting your languages mixed up.
Uchi de電話をかけてもいいです。
はい、そうですね。Yeah. Although casa de 電話かけてもいいです sounds interesting.
You're only allowed to
Yeah,
call
you're allowed to make phone calls from under your umbrella, yes.
You're only funny at
Well, maybe you're explaining how phones work, and
Right.
they think that umbrellas
Block cell
totally
phone.
block it.
Right,
So you're explaining to them.
yeah,
I was thinking if it's raining and your phone's gonna get ruined.
right, yeah.
Eh.
Okay, anyway, moving on. Tatiana-san?
学校で友達に会ってもいいです。
あってもいいです。はい。
会ってもいいです。図書館で話して
はい、
はいけません。
はい、いいですね。Dylan-san, why don't you invent a couple since you only got to read the examples before?
So, 学校休んではいけません。
はい。
And then, I can take this a couple different ways, but うちで中学の食べ物を I guess you could say 食べてもいいです or you could,
Yeah, 食べてもいいです。
Yeah.
That's what we were going for. Did you mean 中国の食べ物?
中国 did I not say 中国?
You said 中学, which sounds like middle school food. 中国の食べ物を食べてもいいです。はい。
That would be an interesting concept.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember middle school food being all that good, so.
That's a lot.
Okay, じゃあパートC. Okay, so here we get to practice asking for permission, and then the other person gets to decide if they want to give you permission or deny permission. Okay, so Dylan-san, why don't you read A and let Ari-san read both types of B answers so we can hear both of them before we move on.
図書館で電話をか かけてもいいですか？
はい、電話をかけてもいいです。いいえ、電話をかけてはいきません。
はい、いいですね。じゃあ1番どうぞ。You're asking this time.
飛行機でタバコを吸ってもいいですか？
いいえ、タバコを吸ってはいけません。
はい、いいですね。2番。
クラスで寝てもいいですか？
いいえ、クラスで寝てはいけません。
はい、いいですね。
ここでコーヒーを飲んでもいいですか？
はい、
はい、
ラス
コーヒーを飲んでもいいです。
トはい、飲んでもいいです。
図書館で話して
はい、話して
もいいです。
はい、図書館で話してもいいです。
Okay. In this case, there's a ha that is a ha. 図書館で話してもいいです。Yeah, 話して。Yeah. Yeah. It'll get easier to tell what's what when we learn more kanji because a lot of the times when it's a ha, it'll be part of a kanji, like hanasu is a kanji, and the ha is part of the kanji. So it'll get easier when we get there because particles like wa and o are always in hiragana, but nouns and the first parts of verbs are often kanji.
I start with the hard stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and it
And then
helps
they make-
break it up,
Yeah.
because, you know, if your typical sentence is noun, particle, verb, then that becomes kanji, hiragana, kanji, hiragana, kanji, hiragana. Yeah, so then it gives you a nice visual break. That you can see why they don't bother with word breaks in Japanese when you get used to reading the kanji, because there's a natural visual break when it goes from kanji to hiragana so many times within the same sentence. So you don't need spacing to give that function, because the visual cue of, oh, we've switched from kanji to hiragana and back to kanji again, gives you the visual cue you need. Okay. 次。
図書館で食べてもいいですか？
はい、図書館で食べてもいいです。
どうぞ。
学校へ犬を連れてきてもいいですか？
いいえ、連れてきてはいけません。
いけませんね。はい。
Okay, so I get あなたの国で18歳の人はお酒を飲んでもいいですか？
はい、お酒を飲んでもいいです。
飲んでもいいです。That's not 飲んでも、飲んでも。はい。18歳。So you must be from someplace other than the States if you're saying at 18 you can drink. Because last time I checked, the drinking age is 21 in this country.
They're in Canada.
What's that?
Yes, they're in Canada.
What?
They're in Canada because I believe the legal drinking age there is 18. 18.
Well, in other
okay.
parts of the world, it's all different.
Yeah, a lot of other parts of the world it's 18. I think in Japan it might be 20 though.
It is 20. Well,
Yeah, it
yeah,
is.
it's 20.
Yeah, yeah, well, everything's 20 in Japan though. 20 is the official coming of age year. So lots of things that you associate with adulthood start at age 20. At least they're more consistent than we are. I'm pretty sure even driver's licenses start at 20 in Japan.
Hmm.
Which makes sense when you consider how difficult it is to even get a driver's license in Japan. It's expensive, there's a lot more required training, and it makes sense that there's a lot more required training because between
Nothing makes sense.
the crowded aspect and the narrow street aspect, driving in Japan is challenging, you know, because the older parts of cities have streets that are barely wide enough for one car to fit down, but some of them, even though they're only wide enough for one car, actually allow two-way traffic. And you have to be on the alert for oncoming traffic and be willing and able to find a place to back up and pull over to let the other car by.
Not to mention all the pedestrians and all the bicycles.
Right.
So like here, where there's all that construction work. Just
Right.
kidding.
That explains why I don't see a lot of pictures from Japan with cars.
Yeah,
Like, only in like the busy cities do you see a lot of cars.
yeah. Yeah,
Otherwise,
because
it's like,
in the small villages and historic towns all over Japan, the streets were originally laid out to be mainly for pedestrian traffic and the occasional horseback traffic by samurai or rich nobles getting carried by men carrying those palanquins, you know, where they sat in a little box basically with two guys in front and two guys in back carrying the thing. Those were the main forms of transportation in ancient Japan, and there are a lot of ancient cities in Japan where, yeah, the buildings might have been replaced since then, but they're on the same plots as the original buildings, you know, and I've been in homes that are 100 years old in Japan. There are buildings that are that old that are still the actual original. So, you know, everything's kind of laid out along those ancient parameters, and you've got, you know, downtown parts of little villages all over the country where you're lucky if you can get the city bus down that street without it losing a, you know, a side mirror or something, you know. It's really tight squeeze in places, yeah.
Don't you generally not even have to own a car in Japan because the
You can do
trains
without
and
it,
buses
yeah.
pretty much get you wherever
Yeah.
you need to go?
Yeah, I mean, I had a friend who had small kids who told me that she felt like having a car was necessary for her just in case one of the kids got sick and it was after hours and she couldn't get public transit or something. She wanted to be able to drive her kids to the hospital if necessary. But other than that, you can get around with just public transit. I never drove while I was in Japan. I used public transit the whole time, and even in the rinky-dink small town that I was teaching English in, the buses and trains, there was actually a train that ran between among the various towns that were kind of strung along this river. Even that ran once an hour. Even the city buses in this little tiny town ran once an hour, and this is a town that makes Melbourne look like a major metropolis, you know? It was tiny. I could walk across the whole town in half an hour. I mean, literally, like one end to the other, diagonally. And, you know, so that was a small town, and they had once an hour bus service. And pretty much any place else you went, you had bus service at least that much, except for some towns that were truly almost ghost towns. I mean, one of the middle schools I taught at only had 13 students total for 3 grades. They no longer had bus service. But, you know, most of them just walked everywhere if they didn't drive yet. You know, the town itself was teeny tiny. You only needed a car if you wanted to get out of that town to another town. Because it was like up the mountain and down the mountain to get to the next town.
Uphill both ways. Just kidding.
Well, it was like up the zigzag, down the zigzag, and oh look, there's a monkey. Through the woods. Yeah.
Not to get off topic, but did you hear about what's happening in China? Because it's the year of the monkey, people are getting these little thumb monkeys.
I did not know about.
I saw it on a news YouTube
Okay.
show.
You mean like actual live monkeys?
Yeah,
that are
there's
that
live
tiny?
monkeys, and they're tiny, and they fit on your thumb. And it's probably a bad idea, because they're bringing these animals into
Yeah.
China.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a really
No.
smart choice for a pet. I would imagine that even a really tiny monkey can wreak havoc in your house if it decides it wants to.
Just think of it more, usually when you get smaller animals, like the dogs, a lot of the bigger dogs are a lot, have less energy, but the smaller,
Are
they're small.
hyperactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chihuahuas are crazy.
Yeah, not to mention longer lived usually. The smaller breeds tend to live longer, so you could have a very long-lived tiny hyper monkey on your hands that can fit itself into places that you wouldn't imagine a monkey could get and wreak havoc in all kinds of ways you can't even imagine. So
It gets into your spice cabinet.
yeah, I can just
Okay.
imagine finding it hiding in something in your kitchen cabinet.
It's just because it's the year of the monkey. Like,
Yeah, so what are they gonna do the year of the dragon? Oh, boy.
No, we just give them geckos from Florida.
Helps us out.
make a business.
Oh, boy. Okay. So let's look at part 4. So, コーヒーを飲みます. Okay, so this is 朝起きてコーヒーを飲みます. So here's where I was talking about there's more uses to te form than just please, may I, and no you may not, right? Here's a new function, which is connection. You're connecting a sequence of verbs that you did this, then that, then that, then that, then that. Or you're going to do this, then that, then that, then that, then that. However many verbs you want to string along into one single run-on sentence, you can. There's no run-on sentence rule in Japanese. There's no limit, no more than 5 verbs in a sentence or anything, So if you like long sentences and you want to put your whole daily routine, your whole schedule into one sentence and say, 朝起きて、コーヒーを飲んで、学校に行って、図書館で勉強して、テスト取って、家に帰って、晩ご飯を食べて寝ます. I think that was 8.
I'm picturing a little kid
Yeah.
learning te form and then
Yeah, and
on
just going on and on and on, yes. I'm sure it happens. I would be willing to bet that every 4 and 5-year-old in Japan has done that a few times.
That's right. No little kid ever wants to yield the floor.
Right, they want to keep talking and talking and talking, yes. I have 2 of those in my house, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, the biggest
Oh,
argument
no, go ahead.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes the biggest argument in our house is, I'm not done yet, but I want to tell my story, but I'm not done yet.
Allow me to finish the story.
It's my turn. Yeah. So for now, they're just having you do a sequence of 2. So their example, she woke up and then she drank coffee, she's going to watch TV and then go to school, et cetera, et cetera. But you can, I'm serious about the no run-on sentence rule. There's an author in Japanese who's famous for his long, ridiculously hard to translate sentences. Literally one sentence that took up 3 or 4 lines and was its own paragraph in a short story, And, translating that, it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to break this into a few different sentences in English. You know, it was one of our projects for one of my advanced lit classes in grad school was reading this guy's work and having to do a written translation into English. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to break this apart because there's no way that this is all gonna fit into one sentence in English. You know?
Blah, 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 and
I'm
then
just
blah, blah, blah,
imagining
and then.
just one page
Yeah.
being filled with detail.
Yeah, I mean, this particular author just seems to enjoy making extremely long sentences.
Well, it's making him famous.
Well, no, he's the Nobel laureate because he's an amazing
He's
writer.
the James Joyce of Japan. Right?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. His most famous novel was called A Personal Matter in English. The English translation is actually very well written. And it's a fictionalized account of his own personal story being this amazing, smart intellectual, and his son is born with Down syndrome.
I
And
think you mentioned that.
yeah, he has to deal with that emotionally as well as the practical day-to-day life of, you know, how you raise a child with Down syndrome in a society that still stigmatizes any sort of physical or mental handicap to a much more extreme degree than American society does. So it was an amazing book, but he takes that theme from his own life and turns it into a novel. So, anyway, so, yeah, heavy stuff. But one of my professors was actually the man who published the translation into English of that novel. Anyway, so whose turn were we up to here? Who did, oh yeah, you did. So Andrea-san, you get to do the example sentence for us.
朝起きて、
起きて。
コーヒーを飲みます。
はい、じゃあ1番。
テレビを見て、うちで帰って、
うち
う
を
ち
出かけます。Leave the house, is that what you're
Oh,
trying
I
for?
thought she was coming home.
No,
Yeah, that's confusing.
that
Yeah,
is a
looks
very
like she's coming
confusing
in.
illustration, but I think what you're seeing behind her is the genkan.
Oh. Okay, so she's,
Yeah, so she's walking out of the house.
so, うちで、
Uchi o
うちを
dekakemasu.
出かけます。
Or gakko ni ikimasu, or, you know, however you want to put it. But, yeah, so you could do, you know, there are a few options there, because you could also do turn off the TV and then leave.
Okay, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're showing the remote control, so
Yeah.
it kind of looks like she's turning it off and then heading out the door. But, yeah, it's hard to tell from this illustration, but if you look, you can kind of see that there's like a lower piece to the floor, and then there's a single step up to
Yeah.
like a wooden hallway. And that's a typical genkan configuration in Japan, that the first part of the entryway, when you come in the front door, is a lower level, and then the rest of the house is one step up from that. And that's, you know, that lower level is where shoes are allowed to touch. And the upper level is where you only touch with stocking feet or your slippers. So, and if you're a guest in the home, very often they'll have some guest slippers on like a little slipper tree on one side.
Slipper tree.
And you either take, very often the hostess, if they know you're coming, the hostess will take the slippers and lay them out right at the edge there, so that it's very easy for you to just step out of your own shoes and step straight into slippers without your socks ever touching the nasty bottom floor or your shoes touching the upper level in any way. And Japanese people are very good at slipping in and out of their shoes, even lace-ups. You know, and you don't see them using a lot of difficult to get off shoes. So like those sneakers that have hardly any back to them, and they're basically slip-on sneakers, those things like that are very popular in Japan because they're easy to get on and off. You know, boots that come up to your knee with a zipper or whatever, not very popular in Japan. You know, and if you do have them, it's kind of an interesting, awkward little dance. You get into the Genkan and there's no place to sit, so you just kind of stand there and do this and this, unzip first, and then kind of half get out of them, step out to get into the slippers, and then turn around wearing your slippers and bend down and pick up the boots and put them in the little cubby that's made for that. Most Genkan in Japan have like a little shoe cubby area with storage space for the family shoes and a few empty slots for guests to leave their shoes. Yeah, so anyway, so something along the lines of テレビを消して、家を出かけます。Yeah. It's a remote, so I don't think it's supposed to be a computer. It kind of looks like a computer monitor, but these days they kind of look the same anyway.
朝ごはんを食べて、トイレを使います。
使います。はい。or トイレに行きます。either one. Yeah.
Okay.
使います。Yeah. And again, notice the cultural differences. It's interesting. But do you see the little like cover over the toilet paper roll?
Oh.
Most Japanese toilet paper holders have this little cover thingy that's sometimes metal, sometimes plastic, but it's got enough of an edge so that if you hold it down with one hand and you rip with the other hand, it kind of gives you a nice clean tear with the toilet paper, because a lot of Japanese toilet paper isn't that cleanly perforated. So even if you're aiming for the perforated part, it's like there might be a few perforations, but then parts of it that didn't get perforated properly.
Just like crease it.
Yeah, so it just kind of tears off easier when you use that. So yeah, over not under in Japan. They have answered the eternal question. They have a definitive answer to that one in Japan.
Just go in and turn it upside down to mess with them.
And they'll be forever angry as they try to do
Forever
God.
offended. Okay.
Yeah, and they don't show it in this picture, but a lot of Japanese homes have toilet slippers. So you actually literally like take off your house slippers at the door and step into slippers that are just for use inside the bathroom.
Like Crocs or something?
Yeah, Crocs, or they could be soft slippers because, you know, it's just the toilet room. And if it's a pedestal seat like that, then you're not worried about dirt anymore. It's just custom, habit. But the origin of it, I think, was that, you know, outhouses tend to be dirty. And so they used to have a separate set of Crocs or something for inside the outhouse so that you didn't have to worry about getting anything on your shoes that you were going to then walk around other places with.
Avoid toilet paper on your shoe.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it does that too.
Okay.
Yeah, but, and they show this guy barefoot, but that's not realistic either, because usually in Japan,
Well, it would
They don't
confuse
like-
us.
they don't like people going around the house barefoot. They want you to have some kind of sock or slipper on your feet at all times.
So it would confuse us to think if you could take your shoes in there with it, though.
Yeah, you don't, if they don't have separate toilet slippers, some people still wear their slippers from the rest of the house into the bathroom. Some houses, they actually have the habit of kick your slippers off at the door, even if they don't have other slippers for inside the bathroom. Yeah, there's, like, I remember one of my host families, their habit was all the parts of the house that had wood floor or linoleum, you wore your slippers, but carpeted rooms, you left your slippers at the door.
And you wore socks.
And you just had socks on, yeah. And you wore socks on carpet and on tatami. You don't wear your slippers on the tatami mats, ever, because the bottoms of the slippers are too harsh on the tatami mat reeds. They're very delicate reeds and they break easily, so it's always socks only on tatami mats. So, one of the things that you have to become more conscious of when you're living in Japan is, do you have holes in your socks? You get rid of holey socks a lot faster in Japan because people are gonna notice.
So like people wear flip flops, and you can't wear like
You
you
wear
can't
them
walk around barefoot.
If you've got a pair of flip flops for in the house, they would be for only in the house, and they would, you would buy them brand new and never use them outdoors. You would only use them in the house. I actually, because in schools also, they have indoor shoes and outdoor shoes, and the indoor shoes are usually a kind of sneaker. But the chances of me finding my size shoes in Japanese school sneakers were somewhere between slim and none, because I have big feet by Japanese standards. So,
Well, that's all of us, I think.
so my host mom took a pair of my sneakers. I had 2 pair, thank goodness. She took 1 pair of my sneakers and washed the bottoms so that I could bring them to school and have them as my school sneakers at high school. Because all grade schools have that thing where, because it's mostly one big building, like high schools here, you wear your indoor shoes in school, and you wear your outdoor shoes for outside of school.
Yeah, in anime you always see.
I was
You
wondering,
always
I was
see
like,
them.
why are they changing their shoes? I was like, what's
Yep.
wrong with them?
Indoor shoes and outdoor shoes, so that you're not tracking all kinds of dirt and mud into the school. It helps keep
Yeah.
the school cleaner. And then the students who do most of the janitorial work anyway have less work to do because they're not cleaning up mud all the time.
I was gonna say in anime you always see the lockers right outside in front of the door.
Yeah, there's always the lockers, and
They always get
depending
their
on the
shoes.
school, some kids have like an assigned locker. And so every day they go to the exact same locker and they know that's where their school shoes are, and that's where they get their school shoes out and they put their outdoor shoes in. And some of them even have like 2 little shelves, and they're papered so that it keeps the shelves cleaner. And the outdoor shoes go on the bottom shelf so that they're not dripping dirt down on the indoor shoes, and the indoor shoes live on the top shelf so that
They say shiny.
they stay shiny and clean. Yes, and it actually is a good system, it works really well, but I had to have a pair of my sneakers washed first. She actually like threw them in the laundry and then scrubbed the bottoms with like a scrub brush to get all the gunk out of the tread,
Yeah.
so that I could wear them as my indoor sneakers, because, I mean, my feet were probably bigger than her husband's, so the chances of me finding school sneakers were pretty slim.
So do they have like all kids do that, even the little ones? Like
Yeah.
change their shoes?
Yeah, they learn it from babyhood, as soon as they're old enough to walk, the moms will put outdoor shoes on them to go outside and take those shoes off and switch them to little baby sock footies or whatever for inside. And so even if they can't put shoes on and off for themselves, they learn that custom from the very beginning. So by the time they're starting preschool even, they're perfectly capable of understanding the concept of I use these indoors and those outdoors. And, you'll see even kids who are in a rush, you'll see them run back into the house because they forgot something, but they'll run into the game con, kick off their shoes real quick, run with just socks to get whatever it was they wanted, and come back and put their shoes back on. even if you're in a huge rush and you're 20 minutes late for something, you do not run into the house wearing your outdoor shoes in Japan. You just don't.
Will absolutely kill you or host
Yeah.
mother.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Make
just,
you wash it.
it's just, yeah, it's so ingrained that it wouldn't occur to probably not even a 5-year-old. It would not occur to them to run into the house with their shoes still on, because it's so ingrained.
How you raised.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep, so moving on, whose turn was it to do
It was
ofuro?
mine, and I forgot how to say went on a date.
Ah,
So-
deito o shimashita.
Oshimashita.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Ofuro ni haite deito o shimashita.
Yeah, or deito o shimasu, either one.
Oshimasu.
Notice, there's no tense associated with te form. So whatever tense you put on the final verb applies to the whole sentence. So if you want it to be past tense, that she took a bath and went on a date, ofuru ni haitte deito o shimashita. If you want it to be future tense, that she's going to take a bath and then go on a date, ofuru ni haitte deito o shimasu. Okay, it works either way. And that's cool. So there's no tense inherent in te form. Okay, どうぞ、4番。
Okay, I was trying to think of how to say that she's, what is it that she's like listening to homework practice?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
She's studying te form.
So,
Yeah,
Like
she
we
is.
are.
yeah, 'cause I read it earlier, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, there we go. So, shukudai no renshu,
はい。
o kite, nemashita.
はい。宿題の練習を聞いて寝ました。Or you could, there are lots of different ways you could put that one together, right? 宿題をして寝ました。Or 日本語を聞いて寝ました。There are lots of different variations possible there. はい。じゃあ、ディランさん、5番。
新聞を読んでコーヒーを飲みました。
はい。いいですね。Okay, any questions? I'm realizing I have no idea what time it is. Okay. Okay, moving on. Okay, so part B, let's read the example to start with.
朝起きる into 朝起きて新聞を読みます。
Hi. Okay, so this one you guys get to be inventive. Just come up with what you might want to say that you would do after that action. And you can be as creative as you like.
友達の家にいて音楽を聴きます。
Hi, that works. Hi.
うちに帰ってテレビを見ます。
Hi, that works.
電車を降ります。降りて、
Hi.
喫茶店へ行きます。行き
喫茶店
に
に
行きます。
はい。いいですね。
友達に会って、sorry.
What do you do when you meet your friend? Talk, watch TV, see a movie,
Hey.
go to a coffee shop. Pick anything. Tomodachi ni atte, kissaten ni ikimasu. You could even add in like issho ni kissaten ni ikimasu, right? Meet up with a friend and then go to the coffee shop together, right? It's common in Japan to like pick a meeting spot, whether it's the train station exit or a particular coffee shop you like. It's common to like say, let's meet at such and such a place. Since homes tend to be so cramped and there's no privacy, a lot of times Japanese people like to meet up with their friends out someplace. You know, even if they're just gonna sit and talk and hang out together, they might meet at a coffee shop to do that rather than trying to meet at one person's house, just because of space. Moving on.
お風呂に入ってラーメンを食べます。
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting
it's,
choice.
what do you know? 大学に行って勉強します。
Hi. Yeah. I think for a lot of Japanese people, お風呂に入って寝ます. You know.
I'm hungry right now.
Oh, okay. So that's what you had on your head, on your mind. Yeah.
Like,
That works. Right. Okay. So, class. Okay, so next class, we'll start from this part C, using the tip arm cue. And then we'll move on to part 5. So try to read over what it says about how to use kata. And you'll probably have questions, so come with questions. Because kata is a weird one until you get used to it.
Have we learned how to express desire yet? Like, you know,
Like
I
want to?
want to
That
do
is
this.
one of those things that comes